Good morning, everyone. It's Ed Lyon again, and on an even more windy day than I had last time when I was here talking to you about the Sycamore Falls project. So I decided, as I continue to do videos for you, there are so many people contributing right now pictures of the flowers and the upcoming tulips, the hyacinths that are already out, all of those types of things in the garden, that I will continue to talk to you about projects, so you have an idea of what's going on as far as new projects in the gardens. I don't think I'm going to be as steady today just because of that wind, but bear with me. I'm going to talk to you today about two projects that are just starting in the gardens and will be hopefully ongoing and maybe even completed by the time that our public comes back. It is always an issue with us when we're doing major disruptive construction. How is that going to affect our public and our rental clients? So one good thing, and we have to look for silver linings wherever we can, one good thing about the timing of these projects happening while we're all self-isolating is these contractors can get in, get these jobs completed, and hopefully done before our public returns. So if you are familiar with this spot, and I'm going to rotate around a little bit here so you can see, we are just off from Lake Helen, and we're right out at the edge of the fencing, and you can see folks going by on the highway. There used to be fairly mature Norway spruce growing in here. I think there might have been a few deciduous trees as well, but you'll see they've been recently taken out. And one of our concerns when we take out mature trees that do not have obvious issues is that our public will see that. That's happened before in our past, and they will start contacting us and say, what in the world are you folks doing? You're a public garden, you're taking down trees. But sometimes it is important that we do that. This is part of a major sidewalk improvement plan that we have been doing now. We completed half of it last year, and we're completing the other half this year. So there's a reason that we have taken down these trees. First, why new sidewalks? Well, we have operated here for far too many years with this being most of our sidewalk surfacing. Unfortunately, it is a crushed red gravel, and it has presented all kinds of challenges. I'm sure most of those would be quite evident to you. One, as you look at these paths, they're not really wide enough to begin with, but the other major issue is accessibility. And this gravel, particularly in times of the year when it might be soft because of rain, is not the best surface for accessibility. And we certainly want to increase that for anybody to come into the gardens. And certainly for wheelchairs, motorized carts, this has not been the best surface. The other issue is anytime we have a major rainstorm, and this is a particularly bad spot for that you're looking at right now, we have tremendous amounts of wash. So then we have students that are spending an enormous amount of time out here trying to put all that gravel back in place when they could be doing other tasks. And in addition to that, just takes days for that soft surface to reset up as well. One of the great examples of how this becomes an issue is this past 4th of July celebration. We always invite our members and the general public in because we think this is a great spot to watch the fireworks from, and certainly with all of our wonderful lawn space, it's great for families. And the children can be kept occupied on lawn instead of most of the sites where families have to watch those fireworks, which is on asphalt. So this 4th of July celebration, we got severe downpours of rain, so bad that I came out at 5:30 and the gravel was washing out so badly that I recognized that there was no way we could have people come in and safely negotiate those paths, especially once it got dark. So we had to shut down for 4th of July weekend. So that's one great example of how poor these paths are as public access. So then why take down trees if our paths are already going around them? We now have the opportunity, if we're putting in new paths, to change where they go. And we are doing that. And once again, accessibility has a great deal to do with that. So if you look at where those trees were, and then you compare it to where the path currently goes, that's a fair amount of slope going up to Lake Helen. And we have to either do major land removal and reconstruction, or we're dealing with slope that's going to take away from accessibility. So what we prefer to do is then take the path on a lower route and loop back up around. It'll be much easier to get that correct slope, or in this case, lack of slope, doing it this way. Now, we also still love that access to Lake Helen, so there will be a side path from there that goes up to Lake Helen and that wonderful outlook still. But as you can see, it may not look all that particularly steep, but it certainly does, again, affect accessibility when you have to keep sidewalks less than 5% slope all the way across. And so that's one of the goals here, and that's why the trees came out. An additional factor in that decision is that the gardens overall are relatively flat. And it's certainly much more interesting to have some topography in a public garden. So rather than reduce all of this slope here and take that topography away, we are going to keep that topography, which makes it much more visually interesting, and then just move the path to where we can keep it more accessible. We certainly like this advantage of being able to walk up a little bit of a hillside to an overlook, and that is something that we want to maintain and keep. Overall, the new sidewalks will follow the footprint and the locations of the other paths. Obviously, it's cheaper to put in new sidewalks in areas where you don't have to take out turf and you can follow a past existing path. But there will be a major change here. And you can see the gravel path where it currently goes and enters the Jones Rose Garden will be changed. And you'll see right here the stakes that will show that the sidewalk will actually go from this area up into a different spot of the Jones Rose Garden. So the path over here will actually disappear, and there'll be a new path going this route. I mentioned the challenges of the gravel as paths throughout the garden, but we have another surface that has become a tremendous challenge as well, and that would be our brick paths. And this is the path that goes between the conservatory down to the Hunziker house. A lot of public gardens use brick and pavers and other decorative surfaces such as these, and they are spectacular, they're beautiful, they lend an air of formality, but that's only when they're new, at least in the Midwest. In the Midwest, we have continual heaving and thawing, and bricks very soon start to come apart and present issues such as you can see here with the cracking. You're also going to have separation that people can get that become tripping hazards, various issues of this nature. So it becomes a maintenance nightmare. It becomes very costly over time to keep up the repair and keep these kinds of paths looking good in the Midwest. So we will be replacing this with the same Coachella sand colored cement concrete that we're doing over the gravel areas. And ultimately it should have a much longer life, should stay smooth and safe for a longer time period and not create a lot of additional costs and maintenance down the line. So what will it look like when we get done? Well, if you were here the second half of 2019, you will know what it's going to look like, because this is the first half of the project, which is now complete. And you can see the tremendous difference. This used to have the same gravel surface that you see still exists in the herb garden. Now we have these wonderful wide smooth paths that are so much more accessible. They'll be easier to clean and maintain in the wintertime, and just overall really adding to the aesthetics of the garden. As we walk down these completed sidewalks, I know the way the sunlight, we're close to noon here, so it's directly overhead. That sunlight is going to make these paths probably look concrete colored, that standard gray that you would think about. But that's not how they actually look. We use the same Coachella sand color that I mentioned with the Sycamore Falls project. So it's more of a sort of tannish and a little more of an earthy tone than what straight up gray concrete would look like. So I'm just telling you that because I'm pretty sure that that color isn't going to come through. So imagine it in sort of a light tan color. There will still be areas with that gravel, and hopefully somewhere down the line that will be changed again as well. It is certainly very expensive to change out and create as many of the concrete paths as we're doing in these 2 years. Concrete's gotten fairly expensive, and adding color increases the costs pretty dramatically. So this will still work for these spaces. Unfortunately, it'll still wash. There will still be some labor to keep that managed and looking good, but it has significantly reduced the amount of these paths where that will be a concern and a maintenance issue. And you can see as we walk through underneath the pergola and we're looking outward at that beautiful new walkway, the many advantages of doing this project. One of them, this is one of the areas that really severely washed every time we had a rainstorm. Our students could spend a considerable amount of time out here trying to rake out, probably bringing in some new gravel, and this eliminates that whole issue, which I think everybody here will appreciate. We also had another incentive for taking on this project now, and that is we've decided we have to continue to add revenue generating events. Our Spirits in the Garden event, where we added the 1,000 lit hand-carved jack-o'-lanterns, was such a success that we have now looked and researched other public gardens that are doing major walk-through holiday light shows, and we've decided that we are going to do one ourselves, and we will launch that this coming winter 2020. We have discovered they do generate enormous amounts of revenue, and it's a great thing for the community and draw into the gardens. But in order to do that, we could not keep gravel and the bad brick paths in such shape through the winter time to really move people easily and safely through such a light show. So we have been generating revenue from our Nature Connects Art with Lego Bricks exhibits, and we decided that we would take some of that money and we would reinvest into something that would generate even more revenue. So that's where the money for this major concrete walk project came from. It certainly will also benefit us in many other ways, but the whole idea in doing it in these last 2 years was to prepare for that major holiday light show. So as I segue into the next project I want to talk to you about, I am going to use in between the hyacinth display. How could I not? I happen to be walking by it and they look spectacular. So I think this is sort of a good break in between two different projects. Absolutely lovely. They're probably at their peak right now, and if you're familiar with the scent of the hyacinths, the fragrance is just amazing as I'm walking by. So there's a little clip in between that throws in a few flowers, and as I notice, you're going to get a little bit more here. This has always been one of my favorite areas in the gardens for spring bloom. I really do enjoy daffodils, and I love how in this planting it reflects a design term that we call color echoing. So I really love the way that the white bark of the birch is echoed in the white flowers of the daffodils. A wonderful design element. Certainly the yellow daffodils would not provide that same effect. And here is the next project that we will be starting on soon. In fact, you'll see we moved all of the containers out already in anticipation. And this is something we have no choice in. And that is that the cedar that's all the facing of our front entrance is now rotting. And you can see that very easily here. And it's rotting at a very rapid rate right now, and to the point where obviously if we don't do something about that this year, it's only going to get worse. It's time to get it replaced now, because as much as it will cost, it will still be cheaper than if we let this rot away, and then we also have to replace a lot of the underlying support structures, which at this point are still in pretty good shape. I'm going to assume you can see a lot of that decay, and this is our main entrance. This is your first impression when you come into Reiman Gardens. So certainly we can't have people walking in and this will be the first impression of what they think they're going to see once they come in here. We also have noticed, you'll see the top railing over here on this side on the railing. This past year on this side, the wood rotted away. In fact, it rotted away to the point where it became relatively dangerous. If anybody were to go up and lean against it, it would fall apart. So we took it off completely. Temporarily, the steel support is there, but that certainly doesn't look very good, and that all needs to be replaced. And a secondary issue to this that came up and will be happening at the same time with a different construction crew is the aggregate out here is also coming apart. We're getting holes. This certainly is not safe at all. We've been patching in the past. As you can see here, there's a patch, and patching works for a while. Unfortunately, it never really looks like the aggregate it looks much more like a patch, but it serves its purpose for a certain length of time. But in the last couple of years, the holes have gotten much worse. Patching certainly isn't going to work. As you can see here, we even have some of that metal structure that's in between that is coming up, and that's going to create issues. So in addition to getting a new facing for the front entrance, we will be replacing the aggregate here. Once again, a lot of these materials that look good in other public gardens in the Midwest, they just become maintenance issues, safety issues far too quickly because of our heaving and thawing temperatures and ice. So we will be replacing this with solid concrete. I think overall down the line, and looking down to the people who will follow us, they will appreciate the fact that we're replacing it with something that hopefully will last longer and not require anywhere near the maintenance that the aggregate does. As you could see when I was showing you the sidewalks, there's already staking. Trees have been taken down, so we should see very shortly the folks coming in, tearing out those bricks, and then doing all of the forming, digging, forming, everything that's necessary to start pouring concrete. And right about the same time next week, we should see some activity that will start here with the entrance remodel as well. They will come in, one group will come in, and they will do the aggregate, remove that, and get the concrete in, and then they will be followed by the group that comes in and replaces the cedar. So here's a couple more projects that will change the look, but especially also the safety of elements here at Reiman Gardens. We will be very excited to see the end result, and we think ultimately it will be the best for ourselves and our clientele.